students. We do have some ESL programming and some staff that specifically work with our international population. Mostly the work that we do in the Institute is for educating domestic students or students within, the United States. So again, our mission is right here. I mentioned to you guys that it's just a consortium of faculty, a couple of administrators, but mostly faculty that come from more than a dozen disciplines. So we are very interdisciplinary, and it's really great because we have people in math and sciences that come to our monthly meetings who create, curriculum programming that focus on internationalizing the curriculum, which is a big piece of what we do, and I'll get to that in a minute. So these are some of the facets of the International Institute. On the left hand, you'll see a copy of our international agenda. If you guys ever have a chance, I do recommend you going on our schoolcraft.edu website and just kind of browsing through our previous submissions and our PDFs of the actual catalog. I'm pretty sure we've been publishing since 2004. The agenda, or 2006, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but we have a lot of really great content, and anybody can submit to the international agenda. We tend to have submissions from other faculty from other institutions, but we also have business submissions. So if you, as a junior chapter are doing something interesting with a global consortium that you want to highlight in our magazine, we always welcome external submissions. We also offer a writing and art contest for students, but we oftentimes open it up to community as well. So that's one of our pieces. Our Multicultural Fair, I'll talk about in a minute, in addition to our focus series. Our Globalizers discussion is faculty-based, but we've also had a lot of community presence. So basically, we kind of pick like a hot button global theme, and we just meet together to eat and talk and cover this stuff, and we get a lot of feedback from the community, which is always fun. Our global endorsement is our curriculum piece. So we have over 120 classes that have been globalized, meaning there's at least 2 weeks or more of global content in the curriculum of the class. And again, you have things like inherently global classes, so foreign languages, international business, global history. These are kind of inherent because the nature of their curriculum is sort of multicultural, interdisciplinary. But then you have classes like I teach Introduction to Film, for example, as one of the college classes that I teach, and I front loaded with a ton of international films. I create a lot of assessments that allow the students to kind of get in touch with some of the international content as well. So you can see that our global endorsement really spans a lot of different disciplines. And then the Global Roundtables is a big event that we host every couple of years. We usually get about 1,000 participants. We've also made it available to our K-12 partners who are interested in bringing some of their elementary or high school students to learn something about a global issue within a college forum. So I just want to pivot a little bit to talk about the focus series, because this is a program that I specifically oversee. It's been running for 16 years, and it's basically a speaker series. We usually focus on either a region of the world. So historically, we were kind of, chunking out geographical regions. So we were doing focus on the Middle East, focus North America, focus Africa, focus Eastern Europe. And we would create speaker series, art exhibits, international film screenings that were in alignment with those particular regional geographic regions. But in the last couple of years, we've moved towards larger global themes. So right now we are finishing off our language and communication around the globe theme. And I've kind of put up one of our flyers that we had that was including some of the programming. We've also had focus series themes on things like environmental challenges in a global environment, immigration challenges, which was a really big one. And we're always kind of changing our themes. We're going to be moving into a food theme for 2021, which I'm really excited about because I'm a diehard cook and foodie. So that's something that I think will be really fun for us to explore. So that is something that is open to the public. Unfortunately, we haven't had that much community attendance. So if you guys ever have any ideas as to how to increase our community presence, I would be very open and welcome to that feedback. It is free and it's available to students, faculty, staff, But more importantly, it's available to community, and that's really who we really want to see popping up at these events. So that's kind of the program that I oversee. Our Multicultural Fair is probably the one International Institute event that you may have heard of, just because it attracts, 3,000 plus travelers or visitors per year. And if you guys are ever interested in hosting a table at our Multicultural Fair, especially kind of highlighting some of the international global work that you guys do as a chapter organization, we'd love to have you. We don't charge our table sponsors by any means. It's free. You get to take part in all of the different performances. And it's really a great social networking opportunity, especially as you're trying to attract more members into your organization, and also to learn more about different cultures, because we have a big presence, not only from the community end. So to give you kind of an example, the Arab American National Museum is often one of our table sponsors who attend, the Michigan Roundtable, the American Association, the American Chinese Association is often one of our campus sponsors. The Confucius Institute from Wayne State takes part. So we have a lot of community organizations that focus on multiculturalism and diversity that take part in that as well. Now, I want to pivot here for a minute to talk a little bit about cultural competency, because this is really a buzzword in this particular area. And I'm sure a lot of you, even within your own meetings, have talked about, ways to sort of increase the cultural competency amongst your members, so that then you can be more welcoming and more proactive about your recruitment of people from various backgrounds within your organization. So I put the definition there to share with you guys: understanding, appreciating, and respecting the cultural differences and similarities within, among, and between diverse groups. That's kind of the CAN definition. But you'll sort of see the way in which cultural competency operates in practice as we go through. Another important buzzword around this area of work is, of course, inclusion. We often hear about diversity and inclusion as companion pieces when we are focusing on what that means. So inclusion puts the concept and practice of diversity into action by building a culture of engagement, respect, and perspective. And the interesting thing about inclusion, diversity and inclusion in particular in organizational success, is it's really been leveraged for innovation and creativity. And if you look at a lot of these big institutions, so for example, the work that I do at the Roundtable focuses on building more diverse and inclusive environments at the curriculum level. But a lot of my board of director partners are people that work in the banks, people that work in healthcare, people that work in government, people that work in law. These are areas where, the data kind of speaks for itself. These organizations thrive, and they are more fiscally successful when the environment is diverse and inclusive, of course, because it's not just a numbers game. It's not enough to have, X number of people from, different socioeconomic, racial, ethnic backgrounds, but more importantly, how are you actually engaging people to make strategic decisions within the organizations for leverage purposes? So in addition to that, one of the other important pieces, and this is something that as a group, you guys might just want to do some sort of informal work in, is thinking about unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is a great place to start, because I think it sort of allows you to tap into some of the thoughts and perceptions that you might have regarding race, ethnicity, and culture that maybe you were not really even that aware of. And of course, I'm just talking about race and ethnicity because, of the work that you guys are sort of doing. But keep in mind, this goes way beyond just race and ethnicity. This has a lot to do with, sexual orientation, disability, immigrant populations, and so on. So unconscious bias, again, here by definition, can be defined as our implicit people preferences formed by our socialization, our experiences, and our exposure to others' views about our other groups of people. There's a really cool exercise that I do with my students to kind of test their level of unconscious bias. It often pisses people off, but I think once they've done it a couple of times, they realize that, it's not meant to indict anybody. It's just meant to kind of give you a little bit of feedback so you can start thinking more self-reflexively about the ideas that you have. And it's the Harvard Implicit Association Test. Some of you guys may have heard of it. It's existed for a long time. The creators of the Harvard Implicit Association test have actually compiled all of their data over 20 years, and they published a book recently, which looks at, how we form our perceptions of others. And it's a really simple test. It's online generated. You just kind of click on images and words. And when you're done these various tests, it kind of tests your sort of bias that you may have towards people. And it, like I said, it's fun. It's pretty easy. It can be a little bit contentious. I've had students say things like, well, this says that, I only prefer white people, and I'm not racist by any means, right? And again, it's not meant to be an indicting tool. It's just a way to kind of get you start thinking about your own subject position. So the reason why unconscious bias has made its way not only in education, but also in our organizational culture is the effects of it can be pretty profound in a negative way. So we find that when we're looking at recruiting people from diverse backgrounds, if the HR organization is sort of harboring some unconscious bias, or the leadership team behind HR personnel are harboring some unconscious bias, you may not be actively recruiting people from diverse backgrounds just as a result of that. And then, of course, along with recruitment, if you do in fact manage to get some people on board who are diverse in background and who you are leveraging for your organizational success, if you're not creating an inclusive environment, then you're going to have a really hard time retaining the people within your organization. So these are kind of companion pieces as well. Also, performance outcomes are harmed when environments are not particularly diverse or inclusive. And of course, ultimately, this affects larger hiring practices as well. So moving along, one of the questions that people who start engaging in this work often ask is, okay, like, what's the payoff of cultural competency and organizational culture? Like, why do we have to do this? Why should we do it? Number one, if you're looking to attract and retain diverse staff members, then you obviously have to become more skilled in your own cultural competency as an organization. You have to be self-reflexive and aware of where you're kind of starting. And there's no right way or wrong way to do this. I think the best way to approach beginning the conversation is just kind of doing an inventory of kind of like, hey, where are we at? Let's take a look at our membership. Is it diverse in any particular way? If not, why is it not? How can we start attracting more diverse members? And just starting off with a very basic and honest conversation. The other payoff is, of course, you can create a culture where multiple voices can be heard, and ultimately you can enhance your innovation organizationally. And again, the data also shows that diverse teams ultimately make better decisions. If you are looking at a conflict in a particular organization and you're kind of stuck on that conflict, the research shows that when you start introducing some diverse opinions, you're able to kind of strategize and come to better outcomes and more effective conclusions. And of course, if you're looking to advance your organizational strategies, cultural competency is definitely a skill set that the organization should be engaging within. So I'm just going to share with you guys, to conclude the presentation right now, a couple of key elements that you may want to start putting into practice as you move forward and becoming more strategic with your expansion of diversity within your organization. The first one is, of course, developing empathy. And I know we hear a lot about this. All of the framework of emotional intelligence is focused on developing empathy, being able to connect with people, not just from a place of sympathy where you may feel sorry for them, but of course, sort of putting yourself in their shoes, trying to understand where they are coming from, especially as you are going over, different content and ideas. So that's one of the elements. The other one that I want to share with you guys is developing flexibility. I can't tell you how important this is. This is something that we struggle with in higher education all the time. A lot of times we come into environments where things have always been the way they've always been, because that's just kind of the hierarchy and the structure that's been put in place. And when you try to, make change happen, you're really, it can be a really frustrating process because a lot of people are not change agents, right? So if you kind of create more flexible parameters in your organization, you'll find that it's a lot easier to push forward some change that will ultimately be beneficial. Another key element is listening without judgment. I also teach interpersonal communication at the college, and one of the really important facets of interpersonal communication studies is, of course, listening. Listening and hearing, as we know, are not the same thing. Hearing is, of course, a very physiological process. Listening involves a whole other set of strategies. And I think if you can begin to listen to others from diverse backgrounds, I think that that's another really good stepping stone to inviting people into the conversation, creating more inclusive conversations. Another element of cultural competency is, of course, appreciation for multiple cultural perspectives. And the amazing thing about living in North America is, whether we like it or not, we have tons of multicultural perspectives in our backyards. And this is something that, you know, your organization can really capitalize on and take advantage of. And of course, there's sort of token ways that you know, organizations do this. So kind of like the Multicultural Fair that I was describing to you guys at the college. It's very successful. We attract thousands of visitors, but it is something that people often kind of look at as a token emblem of what multiculturalism looks like in an organization. But there are various ways that you can do this, and it doesn't have to be a kind of one size fits all. Another important element of cultural competency, of course, is engaging in cross-cultural communication. And again, this is something that takes strategizing. It's something that takes practice. And you also have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. When you first start having some of these difficult conversations, topics will come up that will create tensions. People will express ideas that may be counterintuitive to what your organization may have been focusing on in previous years. And you have to be open to having these conversations and, of course, getting these multiple perspectives. So I think the one takeaway that I want to leave with you guys that's really important is that you can't really do cultural competency if you're not self-aware. So what this means is that, you know, when you're doing the work, that you're aware of your own perceptions and how they affect other people. I think self-awareness is definitely the cornerstone of doing cultural competency, and it's also a very humbling experience as well. You know, I work with really diverse faculty and staff at the Michigan Roundtable, and Heather, you know, you can kind of speak to this. When you came to the Michigan Roundtable First Friday Forum, when we all sat down, it was pretty racially divided, and you could tell that, you know, if people had been left to their own cognizance, they would have sat with people of their own racial backgrounds, right? The white people would have sat together, Black people would have sat together, and it would have been sort of naturally divided. And being aware that, you know, this is a comfort is something that's important, and being aware of how somebody of a different background might be viewing you strictly because of your racial, gender, sexual orientation, ethnic, religious background, ability, disability background. Just being aware of how you are perceived is a really important first step in doing some of this work. So one of the things that I would kind of task you to maybe consider doing in your organization, at least in your space, is conducting an organizational space audit. And this is just one way that you can really quickly, on a visual scale, just make the space that you are working within a little bit more inclusive. So I can tell you, through some of the training that we've done on campus at Schoolcraft, a lot of us took part in the LGBTQ training that was called Safe Colleges on Campus. And when we completed the training, a lot of us took some of these emblems and some of these posters and this other inventory that we were posting in our offices, not just to create tokens, right? But to kind of communicate to our LGBTQ population that we were a safe zone, and that if students did have questions and concerns that they wanted to share, that they could come to us, that we weren't, you know, trained professionals by any means. We're not mental health professionals, but that we were allies. And I think if you want to communicate allyship in your organization, it might just be a nice kind of fun way to sort of brainstorm with your group and think of ways that you can create a kind of physically inclusive space as you start working towards some of the more difficult conversations and work that needs to be done if you choose to do that work. So the question that I want to end for you guys, and I'm hoping that you can give me some feedback at this point, is what is your organizational goal for maximizing cultural competency and inclusion? with the Livonia Junior Chamber of Commerce. And once you do come up with an organizational goal, how exactly will you assess that? So I'm going to stop there and hopefully get back on the screen so I can see you guys. I don't know how to do that though. Heather, do you know how I can make the screen?
There should be a spot that says stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I'm back. It's good. Thank you guys. I appreciate your time. And I'm just curious to get some feedback from you.
So is your organization open to just students, or do you open it up to community members as well?
So the International Institute, we really haven't had much student presence. We've had some, you know, when we had a president of our international student chapter on campus, we've had some student presence, but actually a lot of it is community as well. So it's faculty and community. So a lot of times we'll get community members who just want to sit in on our monthly meetings, kind of share what they're doing at their organizations and kind of get a feel for what we're doing on campus. Because like I mentioned, our events are open to community. So we definitely encourage that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I have a question. When it comes to dealing with diversity as a minority, it's one of the issues, of course, that kind of affect me. But where's the line that's drawn when you're talking about pandering versus looking for inclusivity? Meaning, if I am somebody, a leader in this organization, and I'm looking for diversity, when do you cross that line from looking for inclusive environment or gaining people who are different than your majority? And when do you cross that line in as to pandering as opposed to being inclusive? And should it be the job of the leader of an organization to go out and seek others who are diverse from their group, or is it more or should leaders just have an environment itself that is open to inclusivity? Can you have an environment open to inclusivity if you do not go out and seek those individuals who are different from yourself?
That is an awesome question. So you raise some really interesting points, like how do you actively go out and do this kind of work without seeming, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of condescending and disingenuous, right? Like, oh, we need to diversify our organization. So, you know, we're going to start looking for Black people, right? Or other people of color. And I can understand that concern. That's an awesome point. I think one of the ways that you can definitely start doing this is teaming up with other community organizations that are focused on racial equity. If you want to be genuine and you want to be strategic in how you do this, there are so many community organizations focused on racial equity. I mean, it's as simple as basically, especially during times like this, right, where we're kind of pulled in and we don't really have a lot of opportunity to engage physically. It's like maybe inviting one of these organizations to hop on a Zoom call with you guys and sort of do a meet and greet, introduce each other, kind of talk about, you know, mutual goals, advancing some of the causes that you may be taking up as an organization. I think you definitely have to be pensive about this and thoughtful in the process. You obviously don't want to be, like you said, sort of pandering. You want to be genuine. And that is definitely something that I would recommend, is just connecting with some of these organizations. And it was really awesome to have Heather join us with the Michigan Roundtable, because again, I do want to emphasize to you guys, I really do two different kinds of work. So the work that I do at the college, focusing on international, on the International Institute piece, is really kind of the global work that I do. But most of the work that I do, that I also include in my curriculum, is focused on diversity. I know Heather mentioned to you guys that I taught in corrections. Mass incarceration reform and criminal justice reform is an area that I'm particularly passionate about. I just got off an amazing webinar a couple of hours ago with an all-Black academic panel that we're focusing on criminal justice reform right now and looking at race during COVID. So I think there are a lot of really great organizations that you can be working with, but you just have to be strategic in who you're reaching out to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's a great tip about inviting organizations that are already kind of, in the framework of having inclusivity and diversity and having them join us for a Zoom call. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Sure.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? All right, I don't see any in our chat or anything either. So Helen, I wanted to take a minute just to thank you for hopping on our Zoom call. I know we were looking forward to connecting with you, and I'm glad we were still able to do that. So I know on behalf of the board that we really appreciate you hopping on and sharing it with our chapter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I wish you guys a safe and healthy next little while. I don't know how long we're going to be holed up like this. So good luck. And please feel free to reach out to me. Heather has my email contact. If you guys want to continue the conversation, I'm more than happy to connect with you guys as an organization. And you guys are always welcome to attend our meetings once we get them up and moving as well. So Heather, keep in touch and we'll talk further. Bye guys.
Bye, thanks.
Bye, Helen. Thank you.
Bye-bye.